Okay, everybody, I'm Tyler Mann, moderator for Alex Clayton. Welcome to Construction Onboarding. Alex Clayton has been in District 1 for the last 6 years as an information technologist and most recently taken over as the Network Administration Supervisor. During her time with the department, she has done several projects including digitizing annual garage inspections and annual rodeos, security IT minute videos, and been on a variety of other projects within the district. In addition, she still currently works on the ODOT security team. She has an associate's degree from the Eastern Gateway Community College in business management, cybersecurity, and is currently working on her bachelor's degree at Western Governors University in cybersecurity information assurance. In her personal life, she has many hobbies: embroidering, sewing, vinyl art, on a cricket, photography, videography, camping, and kayaking. When she is not working on one of her hobbies, she likes to spend time with her husband of 9 years, Cody, and their 2 dogs and cat. They like to travel, play games, bow hunt, and on occasion, he can talk her into a fishing trip. Here's Alex.
Thanks, Tyler. Thank you. So as Tyler said, my name is Alex, and today we're going to be talking about a process that we recently redid. We started the project right before construction season kicked off. So we're going to start with the beginning of the project and then kind of take you to current state. So a couple of things that we were starting with, there was a question asked between HR and the construction departments, and it was, how can we improve the HT's experience going out to construction? Historically speaking, instructors had not had a smooth or positive experience. They didn't know where they were going, what was happening, what project they were on. Things got lost in translation. And there was no real introduction done to construction. So on day one, construction user would come into the IT department, get their laptop, and then they'd get sent out to the project. And the project engineer would have to train them on how to use their laptop, what programs they would be using, and all of the things involved. So, like I said earlier, construction and HR went ahead and determined the shortcomings in the current process, and then they brought IT in for a digital element. So specifically what we're talking about today is more on the planning side before that end user gets out to construction. So a couple of things that we did to improve the process was a guided orientation. So on day one, the construction user comes into the office and they're shown a little bit about what EIMS is, a little bit about how to use mobile inspector, site manager, etc. They also get a tour of district office because some of these HTs have never been to district office, or if they have, they're going to visit HR or the training lab. They also do an introduction and walk through our office and meet the construction team, the HR team, and then they eventually end up in our office. So they also have scheduling for equipment pickup on that day, and it's very clearly laid out what time they will end up in IT. Plus, there was the software implementation piece. So prior to what we're talking about today, everything was managed in Outlook. Patty Schnipke, which is the woman that was heading up this and getting everyone out to construction initially, was sending upwards of 20 emails per person to try and get them out to construction. She had to talk to the project engineer, the area engineer, HR, auditing, and then our EIMS liaison to get that person out. And the workload had tripled over the years. It took more and more time each time a new inspector went out to get them where they needed to be. Plus, there was also a disconnect. So oftentimes, IT wouldn't know when a person was coming in to get equipment until the day before, the day of, 2 weeks before. It was all over the place. So I initially started this process and was working with construction and the 2 HR representatives to fix this process. So then we come to this. So as you can see here, I actually will have to step in front of it here so you can see. So this is what a mock-up of what I was going to implement looks like. So we started out with a form stack form with an integrated bookings calendar. Microsoft has a program called Bookings, and you can schedule in that calendar events, staff, and potential customers. And then it would go down, and this is, like I said, a flow chart of everything that happens. So all of these breakpoints are when emails get sent out. So we were able to eliminate all of the emails that went out specifically from Patty into, I think we ended up with 7 emails that got dispersed. So this here is a first picture sample message of the beginning of the form stack form. This is also a generic message that we send out within the email. So it reads, welcome to Construction HT Inspector, and then it says who they're gonna meet first and gives them a sample of what their day will look like. We included it at the top of the form so that when Patty was filling out the form, she would know essentially what was being written in the email when she hit the submit button, because upon submission, all of those emails would go out at the same time. Likewise, this is what bookings looks like in that form. As you can see, it's just a calendar view, so you have to sign in with your Office 365 credentials, and then I actually had to go into the back end and build in some roles. So I gave that person administrator access, and she was able to add events to the calendar, all from within the same form stack form. As you can see here, this is a sample of what the bottom of the form looks like. It asks some very specific key information, and this will come up later as well. So on the back end, it is a standard form until we get into the submission setting. And it's going to look a little hairy here. The next pictures I'm about to show you are all the rules involved with getting those emails out. So this is all of the mail rules that I had to use within FormStack to make sure that each construction person or HR person, what have you, was getting the proper email. As you can see here, I have it broken down in counties, and I also have it broken down by construction and area engineers. So these settings all have logic built into them, and they go through the form. After you submit it, it checks the form and says, okay, who's the project engineer, who's the area engineer, what county are they from? And then it will send that information to the garage manager, the project engineer, the area engineer, HR, auditing, the EIMS liaison, and IT. And here's some more rules. The form initially that I built also could handle up to 4 inspectors at a time, so that once she populated the form, she could hit, is there another user? She could click yes, and that way we could onboard multiple people at the same time. This came in super handy because it would still send out all of those emails, but it would be individualized and personalized to that potential inspector. Here is a sample of what the logic built into it looks like. As you can see in the top screenshot, it asks each single field, where is inspector 1, 2, 3, and 4 from, and then it determines the county. Likewise, it also asks in the form, who is the area engineer, who's the project engineer. And then it also asks if the inspector is new or a returning inspector. So if it's an HT1, first time out to construction, they get a different sample email than per se someone who's been out to construction multiple times trying to fulfill their hours. This also is samples of the email generations. I took these directly out of FormStack because it's a little bit clearer to read, but these are samples of messages that will be sent to the inbox. So as you can see over here, this is specifically for a county manager. In the middle, you can see where the logic is built in, and it says, you know, hey, here's the date and time that they are going to get their equipment, here's the date and time that they're going to be reporting back to the garage, and et cetera, et cetera. Likewise, so this is for onboarding. We also built the same process for offboarding. So at the end of construction season, they could go into another form, it would repeat the entire process, but in reverse. And it would say, hey, please turn in your equipment. You know, you need to come back to the district office. Here's what you do. And then there's also emails for that as well. This is a sample for the project inspector. It looks very similar to the county managers. I had to separate them out during that process because when I started adding in too much logic, certain rules would override the other. So it was easier to break them out between a county perspective and an actual engineer perspective. This is an email that goes to Patty. She wanted to get copies of all of the emails that we had sent to every department, every person, so that she could just see exactly what they were seeing. That way, if they ran into an issue or they had a question about the email that she got, she could go back, look, and say, well, if you read here or you look at this, this is what it means. And then this is a sample of the email that would go to auditing, the EIMS liaison, and HR. So it says, you know, if I'm going to populate this information, it would pull out of the form. The inspector's name is Alex, and they are from Hardin County, and they will be reporting construction on 10/25 from Allen County, or whatever county has been chosen. Starting on this date, they will need to be transferred in EIMS and Kronos. And then it also asks, has the inspector been out to construction before? The reason that that question is asked is because if someone has never been out to construction before, then they probably don't have EIMS credentials, they don't have a site manager account, and that's extra work on IT's part. This is a sample of what would go to an inspector directly. It would get emailed to them. This is also copied to the county managers. In the bottom of their email, they get a copy of exactly what is sent to the inspector, so that in the event the inspector misses that email, the manager also can see and inform them as well. This is what bookings looks like from the back end. So I'm gonna kind of go through each single, I guess, I don't know what to call them here. We're gonna go through the left side here and go through each thing in turn. So the first thing is the calendar. Obviously, it's a generic Outlook calendar. This here is when you click on new event, this is exactly what you would see. You can actually choose the type of work that you're doing. So if it's a returning HT to construction, first time out to construction, or end of season and returning to the garage. So we actually created different calendar events because a returning HT to construction, someone who's already been out before, their orientation process is a lot shorter. Since they already have that experience, they just need to come to IT and get their things, and then they can go back out to the field and report into their project or area engineer. For a first time out, they have a whole orientation process that they're gonna be in the office for upwards of 4 hours for. Likewise, end of season, that's pretty straightforward. Hey, please turn in the keys to your vehicle, go ahead and give us the IT equipment back, and you're done. This is the bookings page, what it looks like on the back end. So you can see there's actually a public facing side to this, which we're not currently utilizing, but that public facing page actually looks like a form, and you will be able to pick time frames and schedule that time for each event. Since we had everyone going in on the back end, that front facing page was not needed, but it is available. On the customers page, you can see if, so what I did with the customers page was actually pretty neat. I was able to get a list from construction of potential employees that might be going out to construction this year in the event that they're needed for a project. So I was able to take an Excel spreadsheet, convert it to a CSV file, and upload it here with their email address, phone number, if they had one. And then I also could put in their county information so that when you would go and schedule the booking, you could just begin typing a name and it would auto-populate for them to further mitigate the process and make it faster. Likewise, I also built in staff for this, so all of IT is in there. The IT group is in there so that everyone in IT would get that calendar invite letting us know there is someone going out to construction, so someone from IT will need to be available on that day. Likewise, I also added in the important people that they would be meeting on orientation day. So staff actually is put into different groups and then assigned to the different, what do I want to call them? They're put into groups, and then you can actually assign specific groups to the specific booking events that you can use. So like a returning to garage, the only people that need to be involved with that would be IT and one person from construction to collect the keys. Whereas someone who's new to construction and is first time going out, they're going to meet everyone in construction that's in the district office. They're also going to meet IT and a few other people. So they are added to that group. And then here is a sample of what it looks like to build in services. That's what I was looking for, services. So you can go in and build service times. So as you can see, they're returning to construction. It only takes them about an hour to get onboarded by IT because they're ready to go out to construction. They basically just need to log into the computer, and we need to make sure that it works for them. First time out, obviously it's going to take longer because there's a whole orientation process. End of season takes about 30 minutes. Once they come in, drop off their keys and backpack, they're pretty much done. And then you can also add in business information. So to distinguish this, because I have several bookings groups that I was playing with at the time, I went ahead and added a photo or a business logo, if you will, just so that I could easily distinguish when I was flipping back and forth between the two. But you can actually add in business hours, you can add in a logo, you can also apply in basic details, so you can put the address in if you wanted to as well. This is also the additional form stack form. So initially I wanted everything to be able to be done from one form. This was actually not the case. I realized that when we got to the point where IT needed to onboard that person, we also needed a form because some information needed to go from IT back to Patty to get that person completely onboarded. Once we give them a cell phone, we need to grab out the mobile inspector ID. We also needed to grab out their phone number, and we also needed to assign them site manager roles. So Patty would send that over to the site manager team. So we created a secondary form for IT internal use only, that after we got that calendar invite and when they got there on the day they were supposed to pick up their equipment, we would open this form and populate the data. So obviously at the very top here, we have how many users are supposed to be given equipment, 1, 2, 3, or 4. We put in the name of the user, their email address, and then if they're new to construction or not, because that is important when sending things over to site manager team that they know. Likewise, we also created some checklists in there just to help keep us straight, because obviously a person who's never gotten IT equipment before is going to have a few extra steps. You know, we may have to put Duo on their iPhone. We may have to make sure that they can get into their email for the first time. If someone has already been out before, they already have those things pre-done because we have done them in years past. So this is, like I said, just for IT internal, but then it generates an email that goes back. And that email looks something like this. In the lower right-hand corner, you can see here, it includes the full name, cell phone number, contact email address. If they have an account, so is the user new to construction or not, yes or no. And then we put in the district, we put in that they'll need mobile inspector, project inspector roles in site manager, and then their mobile inspector ID. Also, if they need Go forms or not, because that's not something that IT at the district level does. And then this is another sample of the email that comes back. So 2 emails go out in this process. One obviously is for the site manager team. The other one is actually for internal use. It reminds us to change fixed asset information and update the employee phone listing. And then it also gives a summary as well that goes to ServiceNow. So since there is different rules built into ServiceNow with email addresses, this email would go into ServiceNow and create a ticket for us that we could just go in and close it, so that there would be a record. Hey, so-and-so came in, they had to get equipment, here's what we gave them. Here's a summary now in ServiceNow, so if we ever have to go back and track what that equipment was for whatever reason, it's already in ServiceNow. So there were a couple of issues that we ran into right towards the end of testing with version 1. There was a lot of confusion between the calendar invites versus the emails. Because everything went out at the exact same time or within minutes of each other, garage managers and project engineers were confused when they would get a calendar invite for a new person going out to construction, and then they would get an email right after. And one of the major things was that they weren't reading those emails all the way through. We had went ahead and communicated with them that there would be something coming out, but when it came right down to it, they were confused by the process because they were not involved with the whole process. There also was an issue that we did not know if EIMS HR auditing tasks were completed. We assumed that they were completed when those users went out to construction, but we never really got any feedback from that. And the general feedback was, after using this process for, I would say, closer to 15 users, they wanted to be able to do everything from a single solution, because it was really confusing to learn the entire process and have to go through 2 different programs that we meshed together and made work, because Bookings does not integrate at all with FormStack. Likewise, FormStack is not real great with Bookings. So Bookings was built into the FormStack form with an iframe. So it basically just loaded another website embedded into the main FormStack form. It also created some issues too if you had changed your sizing in your Edge program. So if you changed the size to say 120% or 67%, it also messed with the margins of the iframe and made it really hard to see. So we took all that into consideration and came up with a version 2, which is still in testing phases. When we went back to the drawing board, we started looking at other options, and while we were searching, we came across a program called Power Automate. It's actually in the Microsoft Office 365 suite. So my intern, Dylan Bockrath, took over the process, and he went through everything that I had just set up in FormStack and started learning exactly what we needed. So he began testing it in various ways that we could use it, and it actually integrated better with Microsoft Forms. There was an integration for FormStack that we could have converted over, but DAS had a policy against using that, and they don't turn those policies off for anything. So we found out that we were not going to be able to use our current existing FormStack form. We were going to have to recreate it. So I'm gonna see if maybe this will load. We're not on the internet, so no, I guess we're gonna go with screenshots. So we converted the form to Microsoft Forms, and we actually had a few problems when we converted to forms. But this is what a generic form would look like. It's very similar, but unlike Form Stack, we could not mess with the margins of the form, how to orient the different fields that we wanted. So everything was just one long scrolling page because you could only have one line item per row. So as you can see, very same. So it actually, once again, we're gonna go back to the data flow. This is how everything is supposed to flow. When we put it into Power Automate and paired it with Microsoft Forms, this is what we ended up with. And I know that the text is really small and you really can't see anything, so I took the opportunity and went ahead and labeled everything. So if you start at the top, you can see this program actually puts things in mostly as coding. There's a syntax to it, and you can plug everything in. So when a new response is submitted, you're gonna get the response details, the format time, then you're gonna calculate a start time. Then you're gonna calculate an end time, depending on what input is put in. Once there, you're gonna initialize email lists. After those email lists are initiated, it's going to check if the project engineer is also the area engineer, because little known to us when we started this project, sometimes they can be the same, depending on who has what project. The project engineer and the area engineer are the same person, because there's only one engineer on that project. It's also going to initialize a calendar invite, it's going to schedule a pickup event, and then it's going to send out a chain of office emails. It's going to send individual emails to each of the departments that we previously stated: construction, HR, auditing, and EIMS. It also checks if the inspector is new or returning, and then it also sends IT an email with the IT equipment form. That way we can click on that and still continue our process. That can remain the same. So the new features that we were able to get with this was a single point of use with Microsoft Forms and Power Automate. We had an addition of approvals, which I'll show here shortly, to where users could actually get an email and say, hey, you have an action complete. Once they complete that action, they can hit approve, and it sends a returning email back to, in this case, Patty, telling her, I have completed my part of the process. It also reduced email redundancy almost across the board, 100%. The feature loss that we did get was the ability to do multiple employees in a single form, and the ability to email ServiceNow, mostly due to unrelated circumstances with the ServiceNow piece, but we did lose it. For the build specific highlights, we actually have here one of the key highlights in Power Automate is the flow is initializing email lists and creating conditions. An email list is used creating a variable that can be updated as needed. Before it sends any email, the flow will actually check if the project area engineer is the same. It does it to avoid email redundancy, and it uses a similar logic to identify the email recipient. So as you can see here, we had to take it to very base level and do those checks with Power Automate. Some of the roadblocks that we were able to navigate through were reducing redundancy by combining processes within the workflow. Power Automate gave us more power to do that. Using the Power Automate to fill in missing features that Microsoft Forms had. So Microsoft Forms, you couldn't actually hand type in times, and we had some problems with that. So this was a challenge in the first version because there were repeated emails, and it felt like we had a better way of doing it. So Dylan went through the workflow and standardized it so it would be much cleaner and much simpler. And this allowed it to be easier to understand and a lot easier to maintain as well. Microsoft Forms lacks many of the features that Form Stacks use, and an example of that would be the proper date and time formatting. Microsoft Forms only allows dates, so he actually had to create multiple choice sections to build in that time field. The other roadblocks that he actually ran into were performing calculations using unfamiliar expressions. So Power Automate uses expressions for everything, similar to coding. So to allow for more complexity, he had to figure out the expressions and the syntax for it. So he was basically hand teaching himself how to use this from the ground up. But one of the selling points of creating the new version was obviously the approval emails. So as you can see here, he has a screenshot attached here on the right side, and it shows the syntax that was used, and then he also has a screenshot here of what it looks like to get that approval email. Likewise, when you click on approve, it basically just sends you to a thank you message, and then that email gets sent back to the appropriate party. So here are some more email samples. So this is the EIMS, and then it shows what the approval looks like. It's a very simple one-line string of text, and it just says all the approvals are done. So we actually had to build it back in as well. That way, when like each team completed their piece, I only wanted it to send one approval email. So he built it back in that it would collect all those responses, and upon the last one being submitted, then it would send a one-liner that says approvals for EIMS, Kronos, and manager transfer have been submitted for X employee. And then he also built this for the reverse side, so when someone returns to the garage, there's a sample message as well. So for the current state, we actually are still testing this. We have to turn on the Power Automate processes, because once they are turned on, we're in a live environment. And all of those checks and balances that go to specific project engineers, county managers, et cetera, just send. So we have to be very careful during our testing phases and let people know, hey, we're testing this. If you get an email, go ahead and ignore it, or you can forward it back to IT. We have gotten some good positive reviews on that though. It's a lot easier to navigate. It's a much simpler process for the end user, and they really liked the fact that they got a return email on the approval process. So does anyone have any questions for me about this?
Is this easily exportable and replicated?
It is. So, you know, obviously since all of us have Office 365 accounts, I can literally click on share, and I can share the form and the Power Automate function to pretty much anyone that I want to within the agency. I can see Mike back there, he's excited.
Yeah, but there's a lot of work you put in.
Hours and hours. It was a really, really fun process though, from start to finish, especially once we found Power Automate and we realized that we could pretty much take this giant project that had so many moving parts and narrow it down to one singular flow.
It's going to make things so much clearer.
Yeah, it does. It makes things so clear. Everybody kind of knows where they're going, everybody knows what the process is, and those automated emails just go through. And then if there's any questions, the cool thing about Automate that I also found is you can actually pick who it's from. So like we can assign it to whoever's managing that piece for the form. So if, in this case, Patty is the one filling out the form, we can put it that if they hit reply, it goes directly to her email and not just the automated system. So they can reply back to that email, it goes directly to her, and then they can have a dialogue if they want.
So on the Microsoft Forms, where do those submissions and everything get stored? Is it within Forms or?
A copy will get, yes, they're stored in Forms, and then you can actually download copies. What I liked about it is that we could actually, they'll store in Forms for now, but we can export those. So my process for this after construction season is over, we'll actually export that data to an Excel file, clear out the entire form, all the cache data, and we'll drop it in a drive. And then if anybody ever needs to go back and reference it, they can see a complete chain from start to finish. Hey, you know, Tyler went out to construction in April to Tyler came back from construction in October. And we can also see that, hey, he turned in his equipment, he turned in his keys, everything was checked off, so everything was supposedly in. So if something does get lost, we have an audit trail.
Do you have storage limits within Microsoft Forms?
Well, I haven't hit them yet, so I wouldn't know.
Curious. I do a lot of stuff with FormStack. So.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, FormStack was great for the initial process and like kind of just sharing our idea. But when it came right down to it, it was really disappointing that we couldn't just get everything in there the way that we needed to. And we wanted that calendar invite because one of the key features that everyone wanted was the reminder notification that pops up 15 minutes before your meeting. So since there was a pop-up, and I really didn't know how else to get that without the calendar invite, we went ahead and tried to explore options with it. Yeah.
Have you done any calculations on like man hours saved by using this process between IT and all the other departments?
So I haven't done any calculations recently, but I can tell you right now that we averaged, so I actually looked at the initial process in the beginning. I haven't looked at it now to see, but on average, it would take, between all the moving parts, an hour and a half per person to completely onboard them and get them out to construction, between getting them transferred and all of the things that HR has to do, getting the managers involved, getting Patty involved, getting everybody communicated with. It was an hour and a half. Now this process is from start to finish. The last time she filled out a form, it took her 4 minutes. And then everybody got the emails that they needed. So recently, no, but that is the information that I gathered once we went into testing phases. So we took the average for one employee, we cut it by an hour and 26 minutes.
So who's Patty in your district? Is that?
She works for our construction department, and she also works for the deputy director. She kind of splits roles, so.
So construction, whoever determines who's going out.
Yes. Barb Richardson is also our front desk receptionist, and she will help with that process as well. So either one of them could be filling it out. The good news is, though, since there's only 2 of them filling out the initial form, they both get the invites for it because they both do the orientation process. So they kind of have, with those emails and with everything that we've set up, they can see each other's information and they know, hey, this has gotten sent out, this has been sent out, this piece is done. And that's really the end of my presentation, unless anyone else has questions. Thank you.